Hi, hello everyone, and welcome to the University of Dubuque and our Butler Hall and our beautiful Heritage Center. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us tonight, UD students, faculty, staff, as well as those visiting us tonight from the surrounding community. My name is Marissa Jers. I'm the president of the pre-law program at UD, and on behalf of my program and the University of Dubuque, we are so thankful to have you here tonight, as well as Mr. Darryl Burton. And I'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors who made this evening possible, the University of Dubuque Went Character Initiative, the Student Government Association, Criminal Justice Professor and Pre-Law Director Ben Bartles, as well as local defense attorney Todd Klapatowskis. And of course, thank you to the Heritage Center and its staff for letting us use this venue this evening. And so I'd like to introduce Mr. Todd Klapatowskis, who will introduce Mr. Darryl Burton.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you. Thank you all so much. It's a great crowd here. I'm a Duhawk. Jim, what are you, Jim? Are you a Duhawk or are you a Spartan? But I gotta tell you, you just kicked the tail out of the crowd from Loras College last night. So, not that it's a competition. 6 years ago, I was in Chicago doing some training to try to become a better trial lawyer and try to become a better person. And on the third night of training, in what we do during that process is that there's a fundraiser. And no, we're not asking for money tonight, okay? But during that training, there's a fundraiser, and there's so they're trying to collect money to keep the organization going. And I've been to these fundraisers like 6, 7 times before, and I'm like, oh, I'm tired. The World Series is on. It's a free bar. And I was like, I'm not going to go to this speaker. I don't know who he is. I don't know what his story's about. I'm like, I'm going to go watch baseball and have a few drinks. But then a few people that I really trust said, no, you got to go experience this story. And I really trusted them, and I didn't want to get any flack from them the next day, so I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll go. And it changed my life. It changed my life. So, I guess my hope here is not that it's going to change everyone's lives tonight as far as what you experience. But I am hopeful that you'll be moved by what you experience. And that movement doesn't just end when you walk out the doors tonight. That you keep that movement going and actually act and do something that you feel is necessary and just. Because as I look across the room, there are a lot of young faces in here. And at the risk of sounding very corny, you are the future. You have the power to decide what kind of country are we going to live in. And after tonight, I hope you gain some insight into what kind of country this is going to look like when you have the power to do something about it. So, the speaker's going to speak for about an hour, and we're going to leave it open for questions and answers. We highly encourage you to do that at the end, but you came here to listen to Darryl Burton, not Todd Klapatowskis. So I'd like to introduce you to my good friend, Darryl Burton.
Am I mic'd up? Am I mic'd up? Oh, okay. Well, good evening. How's everybody? I am Darryl Burton, and I am also associate pastor at the United Methodist Church of Resurrection in Leawood, Kansas. It is an honor to be here. For me, it's an honor to be anywhere, considering where I was. And so, I am happy to join you in this beautiful space. This space is just awesome. This is beautiful. UD, right? UD. You know, what can I say? University of Dubuque. I am honored to be here. I'm going to talk to you all about my story and what happened to me in this life experience that I had when it comes to the criminal justice system. Some of you have some handouts and some pamphlets, And I hope, those of you who have taken those pamphlets would just go through them, take a look at them, read them, and maybe pass them on, but don't throw them away, because those things are expensive. If you don't want them, you can always put it back. We will take that back. So, but my friend Todd, and his beloved family, it's truly an honor that he is a friend of mine. And I met him a few years ago, and we've been friends ever since. He's a lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, and maybe you do some other legal work. And so as I tell this story, and I talk about some lawyers, and I talk about them in a good way, and maybe not so much in a good way either, as well. But, I want to just tell this story as to what happened to me. It's a human story, and as we tell stories are told in basically three parts. You have an opening, you have a middle, and an ending to any story that's ever told. And whether you read it in a book, or you watch it on television, or even listening to it in music, story have those three basic elements. Is that right? And so, and let me just also just give honors to my God, who I, affectionately call Christ. And I say that very humbly because I was not always a believer. In fact, I did not believe in God, and I don't want to push religion or faith. I don't proselytize, but I do say that because I was a skeptic when it come to things that have something to do with religion. Because as a kid, I grew up in my grandmother's household, and she was Baptist in her faith tradition. And so we had to go to church a lot, like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was a lot of church going. And I'm like, Grandma, how much Jesus do we need? Come on. We go to church so much and we stay so long. Those Baptist churches, they stay a long time, like 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Then they right back at 6 o'clock. No knock on the Baptists. That's just how they roll, okay? So I got away from the church. At a certain age, they didn't make us go, and I stopped going. And I remember my grandmother's words. She said, boy, one of these days, you're going to need Jesus. I just hope you remember to call on him. And I said, yeah, Grandmama, whatever, right. Just dismiss it. Behind her back, not in her face, because she would hit me with a frying pan, so she didn't play that. And so as I, share this story, I want to talk about my grandmother a little bit and then my mother. My grandmother had 9 children. She had 7 girls and 2 boys. And my mother was a copycat, so she had 9, but she had 7 boys and 2 girls. Imagine that. And of all my brothers and sisters, I'm right in the middle, and I'm the darkest of the family. Some would say the black sheep by birth. And so as I tell this story, this is a human story, and there are parts that make you laugh, make you cry, make you angry, make you upset, and it evokes all kinds of emotions, and that's okay. Whatever you feel like, you want to express, it's okay to do that. And sometimes I may get a little emotional. Sometimes I may get even a little passionate. Is that okay? Because I'm going to tell you the story the way it is, the way it happened. This is not Hollywood. This is not something that you watch on, court TV or any other of those shows. This is what happened to me. And it's unfortunate, but it happened to a lot of people, lots of people who are in prison or who go to prison who are innocent. And I didn't think that when it happened to me that no one else had this kind of experience. Well, I was wrong. There are lots of people in prison as we speak who are innocent. So as I'm going to walk you through this story, and I'm going to tell it in 3 parts, but I want you to remember that there is a message that I try to convey, and the message is on this banner. See what the message says? It's a message of hope and forgiveness, because I had neither one. I was in a hopeless environment for many years, and I was not a forgiving person. And even with my face on these banners, I didn't want to put my face all on banners and pictures. I said, man, that seemed like I'm being too much about myself and on these brochures and things. But some folks, my wife included, said, no, Darryl, you don't understand. It's not so much as that it's about you. It's bigger than you. But you put your image on these banners and on these posters and on these brochures because people will forget some of what you said. They may even forget, what you went through, but they would never forget your face, this face of innocence. They won't forget that image of what an innocent man looks like. Because I can ask you right now, how many people in this room has ever met an innocent person live and up close and personal? Probably none of you. I don't think there's anybody in Dubuque in Iowa, in this little county, that went to prison as an innocent man or woman. You rarely meet people like us. I had never met anyone like myself, and I didn't believe that innocent people went to prison. Well, let me just bring you into the story, the backstory. Born and raised in the city of St. Louis on the west side or a little bit south of Ferguson, Missouri. You ever heard of Ferguson, Missouri? I lived in Ferguson. I got family in Ferguson right now. Well, one night, a guy was pumping gas into his automobile, and another man approached him and shot and killed him. 3 or 4 people, they described the person they saw commit the crime as a man who was about 5 feet 5, 5 feet 6 inches tall, medium to light skin. Now, let me just tell you this here about me growing up. My brothers and my, family members, they treated me like, sometimes not so good as far as being the darkest one in the family. They would call me things like Oreo, chocolate chip, milk dud, midnight, lights out, shoe rubber, toy baby, jet black, blue black, black on black, triple black. So how you confuse me with light skin? I've never been light skinned. I'm as light as I'm going to get right now, right here and now. This is it. And if you turn the lights out, I disappear. I blend in with the darkness. I'm a dark brother. What do you mean, light skin? No motive, no ballistics, no DNA, no confession, no weapon, no fingerprint. Nothing connected me to this crime, with one exception. Witnesses. Guys who came to court and they raised their hand, they gave an oath and said, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. That's what they said. And they lied before God, before the 12 tribes of Israel, before anything that has something to do with religion or theology. And I'm saying, if these guys are lying in a courtroom and they making mockery of this God, then he don't exist because he did nothing to him. So don't talk to me about God. I don't want to hear about anybody's God, whether it was God of Jehovah or the God Jesus or the God of, Islam or Buddhism. I didn't want to hear about nobody's God. Human beings did this to me. And that's who I was upset with. I never blame my situation on God. And I don't blame any situation on God in any situation. I believe human beings do other things to other human beings. And sometimes it's bad. It's horrible. It's evil. And then for most of you who have children, and for all of you who have somebody you love, whether it's a brother or sister or a cousin or friend, you would never put them in a box or in a cage for 25 years with you. You wouldn't do that, would you? I don't believe a caring and a graceful God would do that either. But I believe human beings will. Human beings do evil things to other human beings, unfortunately. So I never had a problem with God, never blamed God. God didn't exist to me. But those folks who did this to me, I had a problem with them for many, many years. And so as they brought me into this courtroom drama, like I say, with no evidence except these lying witnesses they call snitch witnesses, I had this public pretender. And no offense to the legal profession. I know some of you lawyers in this room, you may be public defenders. But this lawyer pretended to defend me. And I say that because I saw this lawyer one time, one visit with this lawyer for about an hour. I had a 3-day trial and I was convicted in less than an hour. It happened so quick it make your head spin. This is something that really upset me about this so-called trial. As they brought me into this courtroom, just like this here, what you see up there. But there was a sidebar that the judge, the prosecutor, and the defense attorney, they had, and the 3 of them, they had a discussion. No one knew what they were talking about. And they talked about another suspect who not only fit the description, but he had shot the victim on 3 different occasions. And the 4th time he killed him because it was an inner city drug war over drug turf. These 2 gangs, these drug gangs, they were fighting over drug turf. And they were shooting at each other and each other's associates. It's just like, the Al Capone days when they were fighting over, turf for wine, liquor, whiskey, or whatever it was. Well, these 2 gangs in St. Louis, they were fighting over drug turf. And they were shooting and killing one another. Well, the judge, my lawyer, my defense attorney, and the prosecutor, they agreed not to let the jury hear about that. That's not justice. That's an injustice, isn't it? How could the judge and the lawyer, how could they say, we're going to keep this away from the jury? If they knew it was important, that's why they didn't want the jury to hear about it. That would have set me free because this guy was still on the street and they were still fighting over this drug turf. Even after this guy had shot and killed this man that I was wrongfully convicted for. He was still out there. And they knew that. It didn't make any difference. And so here it was, I was brought into this system and I'm facing the crime of capital murder. You know, capital murder, espionage, and treason are the only 3 crimes in the United States. If you get convicted, you're going to get one of 2 sentences. You're going to either get life or death. And that's what I'm facing. And I'm an innocent man. So they brought me over for sentencing and they waived the death penalty. And they gave me the lesser of the 2 evils. They gave me life without parole for 50 years plus 25 years consecutive. So that meant I had to spend 75 years in prison before I would have been eligible for parole, just eligible. So this is 1984, I'm about 22, 23 years old. So 75 and 23, you do the math. It's close to 100, you know, about upper 90s, right? 97, 98 years old, before I just would have been eligible for parole. So I am angry at the entire criminal justice system because it wasn't death by lethal injection, it was death by incarceration. Wasn't no different to me as an innocent man. So when the judge brought me into the courtroom, he asked the lawyer, he said, do you have anything to say before we pronounce sentence and judgment? The lawyer said, no, I don't have anything to say. I said, wait a minute, I want to say something. Can I say something? He said, yes, go ahead, speak. And I had written on this legal pad 3 pages. I said, Your Honor, this courtroom, the police, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, these snitch witnesses, all of you all are part of this conspiracy. You confiscating my freedom. You framing me, and I'm an innocent man. He said, well, I didn't find you guilty, and your lawyer didn't find you guilty. If you mad at anybody, you be mad at the jurors. That's who found you guilty. I said, but Your Honor, you have the power to overturn this conviction. You saw those people come in there and lie on me, and you can do something about it. They submitted perjured testimony against me. He said, this court and no other court is going to overturn what 12 jurors of your peers have decided against you. And he was right. No court would. State, local, federal, all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. No court would overturn that case. The last words I said to that judge is, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm going to fight this case till I prove that I'm innocent. And then they took me out of the courtroom and they put me in what's called 5 pointers. Anybody ever heard of 5 pointers? 5 pointers mean it's 2 wrist shackles, very tight on my wrist. That's 1, 2. Then it's a waist shackle. That's 3. And then 2 shackles on my ankles. That's 4 and 5. Very tight. And they put me in this, we call it the gray goose. It was a school bus, yellow school bus. It had been painted over gray with wire mesh fence all around the windows. And me and about 30 or 40 other men were put on this school bus, this gray goose we called it. And we were sent to this prison. You know, we were sent to this prison, but I want to get back to that in a minute. We were sent to this prison called MSP, Missouri State Penitentiary, right there, right there. That prison was described as the bloodiest 47 acres in America. Nothing like it. It was a horrible experience, evil, a very evil experience. And I didn't believe in heaven, hell, angels, miracles, and I didn't believe in evil. I didn't believe in, things that I couldn't really understand when it comes to, things that they say demons or wickedness or devils. I didn't have that kind of belief system until I got to that place. I knew it was something different about this place, something very different. And the fact that we was driving up here on this bus, everything was just, we was talking a little small talk, hey, I'm going to get an appeal, or I'm going to fight my case, etc. But as soon as we got to this place, it seemed like life and everything started going in slow motion. As they rolled back these huge black gates and these doors, they rolled them back, things just went slow. And all of us, every one of us, simultaneously, we stopped talking and we just looked, every man on that bus. And when they rolled us down inside of this prison, it was literally going from one dimension into another. It was like leaving a land of, logic and reason and, the land of the living. And we was driving down into literally the pits of hell. That's the only way I can describe it. But my anger toward the entire criminal justice system is what motivated me. And also the picture of this young lady right here. This young lady is my daughter. She was 7 months. I saw her 3 times before I was taken out of her life. And I mean, this was another sentence. What they sentenced me to, life without, they sentenced her to the same thing because she didn't get a chance to grow up knowing her father. 7 months, her mother, they left Missouri. She didn't know nothing about me. She didn't know who I was. When I reconnected to her, to my little girl, she was turning 25. 25 years old. That's how long it took before I got back with my child. I don't know if, any of you have, small children, if you have adult children, of, children that you love. You can't imagine your child getting separated from you for 25 years. Isn't that right? It's unimaginable. So what that harm they did to me, it harmed my little girl as well. And let me just, again, talk about this place, this prison. This place, when they brought us inside of this place, it was a room probably as large as this room. And they told all of us, and I beg your pardon, ladies, they said, strip down to your birthday suit, get naked, and stand spread eagle. And they sprayed us under our arms and our genital area. They said, turn around, bend over, squat. And they sprayed us in our buttocks area with some kind of bug repellent for lice. Then they told us to shower off and sprinkle off. And we stood there what seemed like eternity, a bunch of naked men, very uncomfortable, until they assigned us a prison identification number. The number they gave me was 153063. And they stamped that number on everything that belonged to me, pants, shirts, coats, socks, caps, boots. Anything that was connected to me, it had that number stamped on it. I mean, like degrading me and dehumanizing me like I'm an animal. And I hated it. I hated that number. I'm not an animal. I'm not, you branded me like I'm some kind of creature. And when they would call over the intercom system, Burton 153063, report to your housing unit, report to the captain's office, report to your job site. Sometimes I wouldn't go. I would rebel. And the guards would come and they would be upset. They said, didn't you hear your number being paged, Burton, over the intercom system? I said, no, I heard your number being paged over the intercom system. It's not my number. I'm not an animal. And they said, if you don't obey that order, we're going to put you in the hole. We're going to lock you down in the hole. And I said, put me in the hole? We're already there. What do you mean put me in the hole? This whole prison is a hole. I'm already in the hole. Well, they was talking about ADSEG, what they mean is solitary confinement, where you spend 23 hours out of a day locked in a cell with no human or very limited human contact. The only human contact you would have is when they come and feed you breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They had this little chuck hole, what they call, and they would open it up and slide a tray of food in there, lock it back up, and then they would walk off until they came back and got the tray. But 3 times a day, that was the only human contact you had. So that place could make you lose your mind. And I knew that's what they were talking about. But I was just so angry and I resisted that number and I resented it until they put me in the hole. 2 or 3 days later, I'm like, get me out of the hole. Let me out of the hole because this hole is crazy. And I couldn't work on my case. I couldn't get to the law library. There's something else about this prison. There's so many things. But when we came through this door of this prison, this facility, it was a huge banner, big old banner. Maybe not as big as this, this screen up here. But it said, welcome to the Missouri State Penitentiary. Leave all your hope, family, and dreams behind. And that's what they meant. There was no hope for you. That's why I talk about hope and forgiveness. Family couldn't help you, and dreams were like nightmares, literally, like nightmares. This was a place where when you came to this prison, no one would help you. No one had compassion for you. And particularly if you came to that prison for assaulting women or children in a sexual way. Have you all heard that the worst, case that a guy go to prison for, if it's a sexual crime against women and children, those are the worst kinds of crimes to go to prison for? Have you heard that by show of hands? That's true. That is very true. A guy who go to prison for harming women and children in a sexual way, he's going to catch the wrath of convicts. And I mean, there's no what you call equal protection, no fundamental fairness, no help, no compassion. And some of the screams that I would hear, unbelievable screams, like it's coming from deep within inside of a man's soul. We would ask, why is that guy screaming like that? Well, 2 or 3 men, they went in there and they were assaulting him in a sexual way because he was sent to prison for assaulting or violating women or children in a sexual way. Everybody hated him. And I mean, hate and evil, it came from the top down. Administrators, guards, inmates, but they hated the sexual guys, the guys charged with sexual crime. And unfortunately, some of those guys were innocent. So they got victimized by the system and then by what's called convict court. And guys in the convict court, they would say, if this guy came here and he hurt women and children, then he's going to be punished for all the years he's in this prison. No one is going to let him walk on this yard and have peace. That's just the way it works in that place. That's how it is. So if you heard that, then you know, that's a reality. And I mean, those screams, and I wouldn't say, hey, man, leave that guy alone. Or don't do that to that guy, man. You guys, you shouldn't punish that guy like that. No, I didn't say that. I didn't get involved. Inmates would be rattling their balls and making noise. They were like, punish him, make him feel it. He like violating women and children, then make him suffer. That's what they would say. And a friend of mine, he's out now, and they used to come at this guy. He fought almost every day because he was sent to prison for killing a woman that he had never met. He never seen her in his life. But that was his charge, even though he was innocent. And I remember the guys, they cracked his eye socket. They just cracked the whole right side of his face. They hit him with some kind of, pipe or something. And they fought him every day, every single day. In 6 months, me and him both 6 months apart, I got out and the same judge released him. We both were innocent, but I didn't know his case. And not only that, I didn't help him. I didn't say anything to support this guy. I can just tell you stories after stories about this horror of this prison, and I just share a couple more with you. I remember they put us in this housing unit, me and another guy, the first day in this housing unit. And I think it looked something like this. A housing unit like that, these long corridors, and they have these tiers that goes up several stories. You can see them. They go up about 3 stories with row of inmates. This long corridor looked like as long as a football field. And they would lock this JC gate, is what it was called. A tall gate, 6, 7, 8 feet tall is what it seemed like, with these skeletal keys, 6 inches. And they would lock that gate with these bars as thick as your wrist. That's the only way in, and that's the only way out. And in these housing units, there's about 300 men in these housing units. 300 men, 2 guards. And when one guard go and have lunch, then you got 300 men, one guard trying to monitor and watch 300 men. It's impossible. And they call these walks. They call them 1 walk, 2 walk, all the way up to 8 walk, all the way to the top. So if all the way in the back, if a man is getting assaulted, the guards, they can't get there in time because they have 2 stairwells. They're not in this, in this picture. They're out of the sight of this picture. But the 2 stairwells that goes up, one side, both sides of the housing unit, then they have to get all the way to the top and run all the way to the back. Well, the damage is done. Some guys have gotten thrown off those walks. Some guys have jumped. They couldn't take it anymore. But that's the world that we had to live in this place called MSP, Missouri State Penitentiary. I remember me and another guy, we was assigned to a housing unit the first day, similar to this one. The first day in this housing unit, he had his bed, linen, and his clothes in his arm, and I had the stuff that I was assigned in my arms. He was going to one cell, and I was going to another cell, in a cell similar to this right here. And we got no more than 10 feet beyond that gate when they locked that gate. Boom! And we heard some rumbling. Boom, 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 boom. And turned and looked around. The first day, we saw 2 guys chasing 2 guys, and they were stabbing them. The first day in that housing unit. The day that I was released, August the 29th, 2008, they was rushing a man to the infirmary. This is a prison hospital. Blood just gushing out of this guy. A guy had cut his throat from ear to ear, tried to decapitate him. That's the day that I was released, August the 29th, 2008. And so much more in that place. There was a new guy who came to prison. New guys, they stick out like a sore thumb. Because everybody who's been there a while, we have these gray khaki shirts and khaki pants, but our stuff is worn, torn, ragged, wrinkled. Well, a new guy, his stuff is brand new. He still have the name tag over his left breast pocket. So it was one beautiful day, and we was on what's called the lower yard. Hundreds of inmates out on this lower yard, playing basketball or handball or running or walking the track, tossing horseshoes, lifting weights or whatever. Me and some other guys, some of us were standing and some of us were sitting in the bleachers. And we was watching 2 teams play softball. Well, this new guy came up by himself and he sat down in the bleachers to watch the teams play softball. And no one went up to him and befriended him and said, hey, pal, welcome to prison. We're glad you made it. You would like some lemonade? How you doing? Just didn't happen like that. But we knew he's in trouble. He's sitting down by himself. He don't have a clue as to where he's at. No one's watching his back. And sure enough, a guy went to the weight pile, picked up a curl ball, came up behind that man, and he hit him so hard, it split his head from the front all the way to the back. Like a doctor with a scalpel. You could see white flesh in his skull. He knocked this man almost unconscious. This guy got to his feet and said, man, I don't even know you. What did you hit me for? He dropped the curveball and said, welcome to prison, punk. That was it. None of us yelled, hey, look out, don't do that. We got up and we just went to another part of the prison. You just don't get involved. That's the kind of world that I had to thrive and survive and live in for all those years, unfortunately. Now I want to just ask, my friend to assist me, and we need some assistance. So can I ask Todd to come forward? I want to invite you into an example and an illustration of a jail cell. I want to ask you to come. I need someone to stand right here for me. I need someone to stand right here in this spot. In that spot. Can I get someone to stand right here? Can I get someone to stand right here? And right here, give me someone stand right on these four corners. On these four corners. And everybody else fill in, shoulder to shoulder, and face me. Fill in the rest of this cell, because that's what we're creating. We're creating a jail cell. Shoulder to shoulder, if you can, and face me. This is my world. This is where I had to live for 25 years. They had a bunk bed, a steel bed made out of steel, stainless steel, and it had a 4-inch thick mattress. That was it. They gave me some bed linen. Then over here, it was a toilet and a face bowl. It was all connected. And it smelled like sewage. This prison was built in 1836. And so when we used the faucet, we would put a rag, like a filter, over the faucet, and we turn it on and let it run for a while. And when we took that rag up off of it, it had dirt and grime and rocks and soot, all kinds of stuff in it. So we would take the water, put it in a cup, and we would boil it before we drank it. It smelled like cigarettes. It smelled like sewage. It smelled like feces. It was dried spit and blood on the walls in this cell. It was all kind of graffiti or scratched, names and numbers of inmates who had been there previously in this cell. Lead paint was, peeling off of it. On the floor, it was just, you can tell where guys had walked miles, and I walked miles, in this cell, because the paint was chipping off this concrete floor. This is where sometimes two men had to live. There was another guy in the cell with me, in the cell this small. So can you imagine two people living in this space? In this kind of space? It's unbelievable, isn't it? It's something else you can't imagine. And sometimes guys would lose it. But also, this is where some of those guys was getting stabbed and getting raped and getting assaulted. And you would hear these screams, help me! Somebody help me! He's killing me! Help me, please! That's what you would hear. No one could help these individuals. This is what was taking place in these cells. And I didn't help those guys. I didn't stand up for them. I was afraid. And now I'm able to be out here and to be a voice for someone who's going through that as we speak. Someone is being sexually assaulted in a prison, whether it's in Iowa, maximum security, whether it's in Missouri, whether it's in New York, California, and they're screaming out for help. And I didn't help them. So I want you to Darryl, thank you for coming up here to do this, and I'm sorry I had to get dramatic about it. You can go back to your seats, please. Thank you. And this is simply a role play, an example. And my screams is nothing nowhere near as to what I heard and what I never forget. It's like it's coming from inside of a man's soul. Unbelievable screams, unbelievable horror. And so I began to fight my case. I began to work on my case, and I began to file motions and pleadings with the courts, asking for a new trial, asking for an appeal. And the courts kept denying me. I filed something in state courts, federal courts, all the way to the Supreme Court. Denied, denied, denied. That could have been my middle name, Darryl denied Burton, because I was getting no kind of relief from the courts. And then I went on a letter writing campaign. I wrote hundreds and hundreds of letters from the United States to Canada to Europe. I wrote everyone I could think of. I wrote presidents of the United States, governors of the state of Missouri, senators, representatives, congressmen and women, Republicans, Democrats, independents. I wrote Oprah Winfrey. I wrote the big old, yes, I did. They got in touch with me when I got out a couple of times. They got in touch with me. I'm like, well, I'm out now, Oprah. I love you, but what would you when I needed you? You a day late, dollar short. I mean, come on, Oprah. I'm out. What do you want me to say? I'm out. I'm out. Don't tell I said that. I love Oprah. I wrote the church because I heard the church, well, they supposed to help sinners, right? I'm in that club. The church wouldn't help me. I couldn't get help from no one, nowhere, until this organization. I saw this organization. I think it's a picture of it right here, and I think I got one right here. The first organization, have you ever heard of this so-called Innocence Projects or Innocence Movement? Well, this is the first organization in the world that started to help innocent people get out of prison. You see what it's called? It's not called Innocence Project, it's called Centurion. It was Centurion Ministries. That's who was doing this work. No one else was doing this kind of work. They was helping innocent people get out of prison, and they was on a 60 Minutes program, and they was helping a lady get out of a Texas prison. She had served 9 years for a murder she didn't commit. I said, well, they helping innocent people get out of prison. They've got to help me too. I found out that they were located in Princeton, New Jersey, and I wrote them in 1990, and they wrote me back. They said, yes, we help free the innocent that are in prison, but we're a small organization with limited resources. We get thousands of requests every year from inmates who claim to be innocent. And out of all those requests, we take 2, maybe 3 cases a year. If we take your case, it'll be 10 years before we get to it. This is 1990. I said, well, good. I'm going to write you for 10 years. I had 75, so I had time to write, you know. And I did. I wrote them every year, sometime twice a year. For 10 years. They took my case in 2000. They got me out in 2008. So how many years is that? That's 18 years. I had already served 6, a little more than 6, which brought it up to 24 years. That was 18 years from the first letter I had written to that organization. It took 18 years. Now, can you imagine that you won't get any help? Anybody here 18 years old? Any 18-year-olds? You can raise up your hand. I see you back there. Well, your whole life. Your whole entire life before they, was able to get my freedom back to me. But here's what I have to say that, at this point in my life, I hated all lawyers. I had a lot of hate in my heart. And prisons is filled with a lot of folks filled with hate. I hated all judges, all prosecutors, all police for what a few people done to me, what a few people did to me. I hated the entire criminal justice system anywhere in the world. And I was an equal opportunity hater. I hated them all equally. They were all the same to me. I mean, I'm a prosecutor, a defense attorney, a police, a judge. They were all the same. They just had different names or titles. And I knew intellectually it wasn't right because my grandmother, what I told you about earlier, she was someone who loved everybody. She taught us to love everybody, not to see colors, not to see people of any stripe, except that they were children of God. That's what I was raised learning. In my day, they used to call people that we may call homeless, things like that. We used to call them hobos. Anybody ever heard that term? Hobos? That's what we used to call them. My grandmother fed these folks, and we were poor. She had a big family, and she would bring the hobos in the house and said, these are children of God. We got to feed them too. So, this is the kind of person, she never knew a stranger. That's how I was raised. So now, where did I get all this hate toward an entire system for what a few people did to me? I didn't get it from her. It was that experience. Intellectually, I knew it wasn't right, but I couldn't get past it. And so in 1998, the same year had I received the death penalty, that's when I would have been executed. I would have been executed in 1998 because all my appeals had run its course. They had been exhausted by this point. So you know what I wrote a letter to in 1998? Most important letter I think I've ever written in my life. And it was to Jesus Christ. Literally, pen and paper. Wasn't a prayer, wasn't a plea, because I didn't believe. It was a challenge for me. And I said these words, "Dear Jesus Christ, if you're real and you know all things, you and I know I'm innocent. If you help me get out of this place, not only would I serve you, but I'd tell the world about you. Sincerely yours, Darryl Burton." Didn't have a mailing address. Put it under my mattress for a couple of days and got rid of it. Because had the guards found that letter, they said, "Hey, this guy's going a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He's going nuts. He's writing letters to God. He don't even believe in God. He's not even a religious outcount or anything else. We better check him out, examine him." But it was something else that was unique for me about this guy named Jesus. Do you know that this was a case of innocence? Did you know that? If you do a case study, they said this guy Jesus was an innocent man. So it goes back 2,000 years ago. And then before that, there's another study, in the book of the Bible where a guy named Joseph was said to be innocent and went to prison. So innocence is not a new phenomenon, right? This is nothing new. What I went through, it happened thousands of years ago. What's new is the fact that we in this generation or in this age, we can do something about it through technology, DNA, and other scientific evidence, and get innocent people out of those places, because that's what happened for me with this organization. They got me out of that place. But so this is nothing new, though. And I had to learn that because I didn't know this story about this guy named Jesus. I wasn't interested in it. But when I began to read about it and I studied, I said, man, this guy, he speaks to my experience. He understands my suffering. And so as I began to look a little closer, and I saw three signs, clear signs, that I knew had to be something other than just a coincidence. And one was this organization, it's called Centurion, got the name from the Bible. When Luke 23:47, when this guy Jesus was being crucified, a centurion says, surely that man was innocent, talking about Jesus. That's the first sign. The second sign, the man who founded that organization, and that's a little bald-head man, kind of to your right, that little bald-head man by those two ladies, and I can say bald-head, we got the same hairdo, right? His name is James. One of Jesus' apostles' name is James. That's who started this organization to help innocent people get out. That's the second sign. And the third sign, which is a kicker for me, the lead attorney who helped me get out of prison, well, let me see if I got a picture. Her name is Cheryl Pilate, as in Pontius Pilate. You think Ray Charles, a blind man, could see somebody was trying to get in touch with me, right? And I still wouldn't believe. I still wouldn't believe. And then somebody said, you know what, if you get a Bible, and I'm not pushing religion or faith or anything like that, I'm just telling you the story. This is the way it happened. And so if you read it for yourself, if it has red letters, them quote straight out of Jesus' mouth. So that's what I wanted to read, the red letters. What does this guy Jesus say? He said, love your enemies. What? Love my enemies? I hate all of these lawyers. And I'm going to hate them forever and forever. Amen to that. He said, love them. The second thing he said was, pray for them. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. I pray a building fall on one of them fools. That's what I'd pray. I was not a saved person. And the third thing he said, which is really beginning to transform my heart from a heart of stone and anger and unforgiveness or lack of forgiveness and hate to a heart of grace and forgiveness. The third thing he said was forgive them. Luke 23:34, one verse in this book called the Bible began to touch my heart because he was beat. Jesus was spit on, was whipped with a cat of nine tails, a crown of thorns put on his head till he bled. And then he said, Luke 23:34, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I said, that's divine. That's not human. How could this guy forgive these people and they killing him? And he's an innocent man. I didn't understand that. And I said, if this guy could speak about forgiveness and preach about forgiveness, but then he could demonstrate forgiveness at the point of death, I had no excuses, none. So I began to pray for those people, just like this. I'm going to pray for them, Jesus, but man, you know what they did to me. You know they lied to me. Make them do the right thing. Make them turn it around and get me out of this place. I was so angry. I was praying through clenched teeth because I'm praying for somebody I hated. And I kept praying for him, and I kept praying for him, and eventually I said, I can't do it. I can't forgive these people. And it's like something spoke to me in my spirit and said, no, Darryl, you can't forgive them, but I can forgive them through you if only you would let me. And I realized that's how the forgiveness began to work. And I looked close at that verse, and I saw that Jesus couldn't forgive them either. That's why he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgiveness is so hard. And that's why I preach this message and speak this message of hope and forgiveness, because I had neither one, and I couldn't forgive those people no matter how hard I tried. It had to come through a higher power in order for me to forgive. And it wasn't for them, it was for me. And I learned this word hope, and there's an acronym for the word hope. It's hold on, pain ends. Hope, hold on, pain ends. And what's upsetting about this situation to me is that I know that the lawyers who was supposed to represent me and the prosecutor who's supposed to represent the system and search for truth and justice, the judge, the police, all of these people, had I been related to them, this would have never happened to me. Because they would move heaven and earth if I was their son, if I was their brother. They would do everything in their power to keep an innocent man out of that hellhole. And so would you for somebody you love. Is that right? You would give your life for your children or for somebody you love. They didn't care about me. I was an insignificant African American, and guess what? It didn't matter. The only thing that I can say that we have in common, those who go to prison who are innocent, the only thing we have in common, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, Hispanic, male or female, is that we were poor people. Poor people end up in these places like this and when you're innocent. Wealthy people don't go to these places, and especially when you're innocent. It don't happen, but it happened to the poor people. That's what happened to me. And that's what's so upsetting about these situations, is that they take advantage of those who are most vulnerable in the community, those who suffer the most and cannot fight off the powers of the criminal justice system. That's a powerful thing, this criminal justice system. And sometimes the prosecutor have all this power, and it's one person, man or female, one person can say, I want to seek the death penalty for this case. It was one man that could make that decision for my life. He could have sought the death penalty, not a committee of people, not a group of folks, not a community of people. One man had that kind of power in his hands. And had he chose the death penalty, I wouldn't be standing here today. And he would have been wrong, but I'd have been long gone, and nobody would even cared about what happened to me except my family. I would have been just a statistic. And I said it because if they did that to this, this gentleman who, a big portion of the world called Jesus Christ, if they did that to my Lord, then who am I? Who are we? If that happened for Benny, who we call the Son of God, then none of us stand a chance. None of us. And that's an evil, and that's a hate, and it's in the hearts of human beings. Just like what happened just 2 days ago or 3 days ago in this Jewish synagogue. Hate did that. Love could never do nothing like that. But hate can. You go into a house of worship and you kill people. That's what hate would do. That's what hate did in that place. I don't know how many men got stabbed to death in that place because of hate. It wasn't love. It was hate. And that's what I had to get out of my heart. Like Nelson Mandela said, it was no point in him coming out of prison, out of Robben Island in South Africa, if he had kept that hate in his heart, because that was another prison. Self-imposed. And that's where I was living. I was in 2 prisons, one physical and the other was spiritual. And I didn't want to leave that place filled with hate in my heart toward nobody. And so I had to find a way to get rid of it. And for me, it just happened to come through the example of an experience of this guy named Christ. He showed me how to deal with hate and anger and unforgiveness. He had to work something out of me, that hate and anger, and work something into me, grace and forgiveness, so this work could be done through me. A message of hope and forgiveness. I remember a guy came to the prison and he was talking to a group of us inmates, and he said, I know you guys in hell on earth. I know this place is depressing. I know this place is, it's the worst experience a human being could ever face. But I encourage you men, don't give up and don't quit 5 minutes before your miracle happens. Hang in there. And so that's what I held on to, because I couldn't look out 5 years. I had life without parole. I couldn't think about 5 months or 5 days. But I could hold on for 5 minutes at a time. And sometimes when I was so depressed, I just said, let me hold on for 5 minutes. When the courts would deny me again and again, I said, just 5 minutes. And then that day came when I was going out of these last 2 doors in the prison back to the free world. I remember those words. I said, man, in 5 minutes, that man was right. I'm going to be free. I'm going to be set free in 5 minutes. I'm going to be on the other side of this prison, a free man, in 5 minutes. And it happened. 5 minutes. And here it was. And I said it to any young people or any person, if you're in a dark place, I was there for 25 years and I'm still here. And this is an example to let you know that any pain you face, and pain is universal, it will pass. You will get past it. You will get through it. Sometimes you just have to hold on 5 minutes at a time. But it will pass. So they was able to go back, the lawyers, this organization, and they was able to find a woman who was the gas station attendant the night the crime was committed. She was in the cashier's booth. She had sold a victim to gas that night, and she was just not too far from where it was committed, like from that banner to this banner. That's how close she was in the cashier's cage, and the guy was pumping gas at one of the pumps. She came to my trial in 1985, and when she saw who they had on trial, she told the police the day of the trial, she said, wait a minute, you guys, you've got the wrong man. That's not the man who committed the crime. That man is too dark. She was pointing to my dark skin. My dark skin came to my rescue. Can you believe that? I can kiss myself today. Huh? Black looked good on me. I used to be ashamed of my dark skin growing up. You know, they say blacker the berry, sweeter the juice, darker the skin, deeper the roots. Tupac Shakur said that. I know it. You said it. And one of y'all said Tupac. That's right. I know about Tupac too, huh? But my dark skin, this was not a young woman. They found her in Baltimore, Maryland. She had moved away, and they brought her back to Missouri. She said she was waiting for a chance to tell a judge or court there's an innocent man in prison, Darryl Burton. That didn't come out to 2007. They also discovered one of the key witnesses for the prosecution. Said he only had a couple convictions when actually he had 12, and many of them were felonies. Said he was facing a couple of years in jail when he was facing 30 years in jail. That's why he was motivated to come and lie on me. And the prosecutor and the police, they made deals with this guy. They basically paid for his testimony. The prosecution can do that. The defense attorneys can't do that. But at any rate, you know, this guy was also, you know, what you call a professional snitch. He had been in some trouble in other cases. He made deals to get out of trouble he was in. And 5 months after he testified against me, he signed a sworn affidavit, said he lied in my case, wanted to recant it and to retract it. And none of this came out to 2007. 2 miracles. I didn't believe in miracles. I didn't believe in any of these things. But this is what happened. So today I just say to any group that listen, I am not bitter, but I'm better. Because the God who I believe in is bigger than anything I ever faced. They arrested me, but I believe my God rescued me. So out of that tragedy, this story is going to be used to give God the glory, because that's where it belongs. And I am so happy that you allowed me to come to you here at UD and share a few words with you about what was hell and horror has now become a message of hope and forgiveness. To God be the glory. Thank you for allowing me to share with you tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. You all are so kind. It's such an honor. You know, I don't get caught up on time because I've done a lot of it, okay? So I don't wear watches. And so if there's any questions or answers, any questions, what we got here? Huh? to the microphone. They can go up to the microphone. You can come up to the microphone if you have a question. But I also want to show you some folks who support Innocence movement. Anybody ever heard of this guy? That's that dude. Somebody said, that's that dude. They call him Danny Glover and Embrace Me, and there's a couple of more dudes. Anybody ever heard of these guys? A couple more dudes? Yeah. I mean, I met a lot of people, and I've learned nobody like injustice. Nobody, I met a lot of folks, and I don't have all of them, pictures of all of them. This is what we're doing now. We're trying to start a foundation. We've started a foundation. We launched it last month, September, to also help Centurion on one of these posters, to help innocent people get out of prison. That's the work we're doing now. It took me 10 years to get them to help me, and it took 10 years before I, decided, or I even had the courage to do something like this here, because it's so hard, and it hurts me to think that someday I may have to tell a guy, you're innocent, man, but we can't help you, because you got to have some legal grounds to get back in court. It's unfortunate, but that's what was told to me. The lawyer said, Darryl, if we don't have this judge in this last courtroom, if he don't accept your claims of innocence, you may spend the rest of your life in prison as an innocent man. And it hurts me to think that I may have to tell somebody that. But what else can I do? Guys, mothers and wives and sisters and daughters and brothers and family members, they reach out to me. So what can I do? I got to help wherever I can. So if anybody have a question, these microphones, I think over here, we got time for questions. How much time we got? We got about 5-6 minutes, maybe 7. How many? 25 minutes. We have 25 minutes for Q&A? Oh, well, we can stay here all night then. That's a long time. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to ask you, was your family working on your behalf, that big family that you had?
Yes, she asked, was my family working on my behalf? You all heard the question, right? Yes, my family was working on my behalf, and it's a big family. But, as time move on, 5 years go past, 10 years go past, 15, my family, they started having families, and they started moving away from Missouri. And, the last person who stood with me, you know who that was? Who was it? My grandmother had died by this time. Mom. But Mom, when all my brothers, and sisters, they had their own issues. They had their own life. But my mother was the last. She's still alive. She's still here. She lives in St. Louis. But she was the last one with me. You know what? Mothers, you know how you are. What can I say? Mothers, you would fight a grizzly bear to, help one of your children. Not to say the men won't. Men, may step back and throw rocks at a grizzly bear, but I don't know if they fight one, but you women, you will, yes. There's somebody over here? Okay, right here.
My question is, have you had any conversations with any of the prosecutors, attorneys, detectives from your case since your innocence was proven?
And you all heard that question. No, I haven't had any conversations with any of those people directly. Many of them have passed away. A lot of them are dead now. And so, but some of the ones who are still here, are still alive, they retired or they moved on. But no, I haven't had any conversations with any of them. But some folks who were like all the men and women and a state representative, they gave me a resolution and an apology, in behalf of those folks who did me wrong. And they was pointing fingers at each other. Prosecutor blamed the police blamed the prosecutor. We filed a lawsuit. For about 7 years, we fought the lawsuit and lost for compensation. Didn't get any compensation, lost it last year. So I don't have what you call any retirement benefits or Social Security saved up, or education or medical, none of those things. But I'm free. No but, I shouldn't say but, but yeah, yes.
First of all, I want to say thank you for coming. I wanted to know, was there a point in time where you didn't think that your innocence would be known, or was there a time when you wanted to give up in your fight for your innocence?
Yes, and that's a real good question, man. Let me see here. Yes, I think I'm gonna read this here. This can explain it. Excuse me, pardon me for taking the detour, y'all. But since he brought the question up, I think I'm gonna share this with you, if I can find it, since we got 25 minutes. That's a lot of time in my line of work. That is a lot of time. Since you brought it up, my friend, good question. We're in the 8th Circuit. For those who are lawyers, this is what you call the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals here in, I think, Iowa and Missouri and some other states. This was an opinion that came down in 2002. Now, you can't see it, and I probably need to get it put on a PowerPoint. I may do that one day. But this is some excerpts of what it said and what it read. And you're talking about somebody almost giving up. 2002 in July. And I just read, it's just a couple of paragraphs. It was 15 pages of what these judges said. 3 judges, federal court. And it says that, talking about Burton's case, the present case, the appellant, said the present case suggests to us, to this court, that we may not have achieved what's called an optimal balance of justice in the Burton's case. It said Darryl Burton's habeas petition depicts a troubling scenario. One cannot read the record in this case without developing a nagging suspicion that the wrong man may have been convicted of capital murder and armed criminal action in a Missouri courtroom. Burton was convicted on the strength of 2 eyewitness accounts. Since his trial and imprisonment, new evidence has come to light that shakes the limbs of the prosecution's case. One eyewitness has recanted and admitted perjury, and the other eyewitness' veracity has been questioned by a compatriot who avers it was physically impossible for him to have seen the crime. So they said that other eyewitness, he was supposed to have been around the corner. He saw a crime that was committed around the corner and down the street, so to speak. So the court said that was physically impossible. A lay person would have little trouble concluding Burton should be permitted to present his evidence of innocence in some form. Unfortunately, remember that word, unfortunately, here it comes. Burton's claims and evidence run headlong into the thicket of impediments erected by courts and by Congress. Burton's legal claims permit him no relief, even as the facts suggest he may well be innocent. Mindful of our obligation to apply the law, but with no small degree of reluctance, we deny Burton a writ. Then it said in another paragraph, Burton's habeas petition troubles us because his legal claims do not provide him an adequate foundation upon which to present his considerable claims of factual innocence. Though our jurisprudence offers Burton no relief, we express the hope, this word hope, we express the hope that the state of Missouri may provide a form, either judicial or executive, in which to consider the mounting evidence that Burton's conviction was procured by perjured and flawed eyewitness testimony. In the final analysis, the new evidence Burton has unearthed suggests his case at least deserves a second look. 2002. When I got this opinion, I was done. I didn't want to go on anymore. I did not want to live on this earth any longer. And there was so many others, another, 14 pages of some language similar to this. Why even continue to fight? The 8th Circuit, 3 judges said this. And I met one of them up in South Dakota. I met him twice. Twice I met him and reminded him of this. And he said, I'm so glad it worked out for you. 25 years later, it worked out for me. And he said he put it in a file and he made a notation of it and that he would pass it on to other lawyers and clerks who would actually come and work in his office. That some of these cases are more than just a number on a docket sheet. He was able to put a face with this sheet of paper. He finally saw me in live and living color, a real person, that he had made a decision about. And he said, me and another judge, we try to get you a rehearing. We try to rehear your case. Well, you heard it the first time. You didn't have to rehear it. You heard it the first time, and this is what they wrote. In the judge's name, and I'm going to say his name, Bowman, McGill, and By. These were the judges this was in front of in 2002. To the young man, I almost gave up when I read this opinion. What's the use? If this is one of the highest courts in the land, and they basically saying he's innocent, but we're not going to let him out. Why even go on? And the lawyers, they encouraged me, said, you just hold on. Don't give up, Darryl. But it took a lot. And sometimes I would get a letter from somebody in the mail, and they would say, hey, Darryl, I'm praying for you. And it was a young lady who had been corresponding with me. She was about the same age as my daughter. I didn't know what my daughter was, but she was like my surrogate daughter. And right when I was ready to give up, I would get a letter doing mail call, and it would be from this young lady, and she would be saying, I'm praying for you, Darryl. Hold on. Don't give up. Just hold on a little bit longer. And that kept me going. But I almost gave up after this. I'm glad you asked. Amen.
My question was about your daughter. Tanisha looked like she smiles in her eyes, so seems like she maybe has your forgiveness and hope.
Yeah, let me go back to her.
Have you reconnected with her, and was she part of your hope in prison?
Yes. I reconnected with my little girl, and she was my hope. She was what kept me alive and motivated. And I said, I'm going to see my little girl again. I'm going to die trying to get back to this child. She didn't know me. She was too young. She was just 7 months. But I knew I had a little girl out there. And that was my motivator. That was my hope. But even when I got so low and I wanted to give up, sometimes that would kick in. I got to hold on to see my little girl again. I just got to hold on. And that's what I would do. And I would fight, and I would fight, and I would lose. So I'm just here to tell you, you lose a lot of battles in life, and I would lose. But that was my hope. And when I come home, it was a tearful reunion. For her, it was an introduction because she didn't know me. And we cried, and we hugged, and we cried. And then I was calling her every day. And then she said, you know, Dad, I know you love me, but pump your brakes. I'm a young woman. I have a life. You know, you're calling me every day. Same thing going on today that was yesterday and the day before. It was the same thing, you know. And she called me today. You know, imagine that. Now she calls me. She used to just text. She wouldn't call. She wouldn't talk on the phone. Young people, you know what I'm talking about, right? You don't hardly talk on the phone. You text all day long. But she called me today. And she has a powerful story also. Can I just tell you a little bit about her story? She and her mother, and she had 2 other children. She had 2 other children when they left Missouri. One was 2 and one was 1. 1 and 2 years old. My daughter was 12. Well, they left Missouri, and her mother got caught up in some issues, you know, pretty much, you know, self-inflicted, you know, with substance abuse and things like that. And she would leave my little girl and those other 2 children, 1 and 2 years old, she would leave them in basements, abandoned buildings, vacant homes, shelters, and go off on a bench. And my little daughter said one day they was in this house for several days, in this vacant house, hungry. She's got a 1 and 2 year old, she's 12. She's trying to figure out how can I feed these kids, these my little brothers and sisters. And she went around through the house, an empty house, vacant house, and she found 17 cents. And there was a little mom and pop store across the street from the house. And she went over to this mom and pop store, and her little brother and sister, they was in the window just watching her. She said, I got to go try to get something to eat for us. And she walked across the street to this mom and pop store. And she told the guy, she said, you know, I'm trying to get something to eat for my little brother and my little sister. There they are in the window. We don't have nothing to eat. And he said, well, where's your mom? She said, I don't know. I haven't seen her for several days. Where's your dad? I don't know my dad. She didn't know me. And I believe that's how she lost parental custody of him, and they ended up in foster care. So my daughter was in an institution just like I was. And I tell her, the only thing I ever gave her, I've never given her anything, I've been able to do anything for her, is a fighting spirit. Because she graduated high school on time, and at 18, she emancipated herself from the foster care system. I gave her nothing. I was not there for her. But that's my little girl, my young lady today, and I'm proud of her. You know, it's heartbreaking. That's a tough one. Why you want to make me cry? That's how your children do you, right?
Has she forgiven?
She's getting there. It was a struggle. And I abandoned her no matter how it happened. You know, she asked, has she forgiven? And I abandoned her, and she was angry at me, you know, for a few years because I wasn't in her life. But yes, she has. She has said, you know, my message that I've been doing this for years, 10 years, going around talking about hope and forgiveness, and she's been listening to it, and she wasn't there. She says she's at that place. She's gotten better about it, and she has forgiven me and her mom because neither one of us was in her life. Her mom also went to prison, you know, and I'm not setting her mom out. This is a story her mom tell it also, but her mom now is in recovery. She's in the church. You know, we're better now. We're much better now. So it's a story of hope and redemption and forgiveness. So we better. Yes, sir.
Through your forgiveness and hope, do you feel like through all the criminal justice and everything that you've been through, do you feel like you were treated fairly throughout the criminal justice system?
Do I feel like I was treated fairly? You know, you talking about with regards to the hope and forgiveness, say it again?
Regarding the hope and forgiveness.
Regarding the hope and forgiveness, do I feel like I was treated fairly?
Going through the
criminal justice system? Oh, no. No, I was not treated fairly going through the criminal justice system. And you know, this message of hope and forgiveness, I stumbled into this because, like I said, I had neither one of them. And no, the system was not fair. It was not fair to me and a lot of other folks. And do you know that there's 2.3 million people in prisons in the United States? At least a conservative number, 1% of them are innocent. 1% of 2.3 million people, that's 23,000 people, right? 23,000 people, that's about a third of Dubuque, Iowa. If it's 60,000 people in this community, that's at least 1/3 of your population would be in prison innocent. That's a lot of people. So the system is not fair. I mean, life is not fair. When you think about it, you know, we would say that we would hope that everybody, you know, have a fair, you know, opportunity and equal opportunities. Well, it's really not like that. I mean, I would love, you know, ideally, I would love that life would be fair for everybody, but it's not. And it's unfortunate. And just for an example, I mean, we all think, we'd all would like to believe that we're born equal and we're born the same way. Well, I mean, I'm just out to be honest. I'm not. I'm a black man. I'm a dark brother. You know, I get profiled. It's not fair. But there are some people, even beyond that, who are born with no arms or no legs, or they're born with some kind of, you know, genetic defect. That's not fair, right? So life is not fair to any of us. I mean, I'm born with both arms and legs and fingers and toes, but some people are born blind. They can't see, and that's not fair. So who do you blame for that? Don't blame anybody. But we can try to do something about it for everybody, for all of us. That's something all of us have a responsibility to, you know, to try to make a change and try to make a difference in the world. I see you over here. You over here, Dreadlock. What's up?
What was the first thing you did when you got out?
Oh, well, we ready to laugh now, ain't we? Well, the first thing I did when we got out. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you. I'm glad you asked. I got out on a Friday. And they took me to this place called TGI Fridays. It was on a Friday. And they said, what do you want to eat? I said, man, well, I want two things. They said, what? Get anything you want. A salad and a glass of water. That's it. They said, salad and a glass of water. I said, yes. They said, you can have more than that. Well, in prison, you get lettuce, iceberg lettuce. You get no other vegetable, and you get no dressing with it. No dressing, no ranch, no French, no dressing. Just a dump of iceberg lettuce. And the water, remember I told you the water tastes and smells in prison like sewage. So I want a fresh glass of water. It's real water. That's all I wanted. And they said, no, you want more than that. I said, well, I'm a vegetarian. It's not, they don't have, they said, they got something for vegetarians. They got these things called mozzarella sticks. I said, mozzarella stick. I said, what is that? They said, fried cheese. Fried cheese? Who eat fried cheese? That's a heart attack waiting to happen. Who eat fried cheese? Until I tried it. I said, man, who thought of this? Get 2 more servings of this. This stuff is unbelievable. Was somebody chopping next to the deep fryer and cheese slipped over in it? They said, man, this isn't a good idea. It tastes pretty good. Let's sell it. They come up with fried cheese, fried pickles, fried onion rings. I mean, all these fried things. And this little red sauce, they call it marinara sauce. I can't believe it. And I said, wow, this is crazy out here. Fried cheese. And my cholesterol went up. I said, it's unbelievable. Another thing about the free world, the first thing I did, but, then I called home, this little cell phone, this big in my hand. It said, if you call 10 digits, just, that's long distance, make sure it's 10 digits. And I call home, and I put this thing just up here, nothing by my mouth, and I'm yelling, hey, how y'all doing? I said, what are you yelling for? You can hear me? Yes, loud and clear. I didn't understand that. I went to, and I see you over here, I went to a public restroom to use the toilet in a public restroom. And this thing started flushing by itself. What's wrong with this thing? You use the toilet and get a shower. I can't believe it. And I'm standing at the face bowl, and I'm trying to figure out how you turn this thing on because there are no knobs. No knobs. And I'm looking, and I'm stepping back, and this guy's looking at me. He knew something was different about me because I'm doing like this here, and I'm studying this thing. I'm like, how do you turn this thing on? So the guy said, you having problems, buddy? I said, yes. I'm just having problems trying to figure out how do you turn this thing on. He said, well, just stick your hands under there. I said, no, you just stick your hands under there. I don't know what's up with this thing. And he did. And I said, wow, what kind of magic is this? I stayed in there for 20, 30 minutes playing with this thing. I said, look at this. How does this work? This is crazy. Couldn't figure it out. Lady gave me a television. I hadn't, I heard they got 500 stations, so I'm going to watch TV all night, all day. And 4 buttons, 2 to change the channel, 2 to turn up the volume and down, and turn the volume. So I'm thinking, hey, I got to figure this out. So she went back to her apartment, and it was for hours, 2 or 3 hours, and then eventually it came to me. I said, oh, this is the new technology. It's voice activated. So I started talking to it. Turn on, please. Darryl want to watch the program. Come on. Sports, news, Oprah, turn on. I said, ma'am, I can't figure out. Come and turn this television on. So right down the television, the panel of the television, it's a little door, and she opened it up, off and on switch. And I said, ma'am, I'm so embarrassed. Whatever you do, don't tell nobody I couldn't turn on the television. She went right out to the news media the next day, said, the man been gone so long, he couldn't turn on the television. Now that's just an injustice. I said, ma'am, I thought I told you not to tell nobody. She said, well, I'm going to tell everybody. The whole world need to know. So it's crazy. It's you and then you over here.
You mentioned that it took you 8 years before the Centurion group was able to take your case.
No, it took me 10 years before they took the case.
Before they took the
and
case.
8 years before they got me out.
How do they determine which cases they take? And I assume there are some people that are in prison that claim they're innocent but maybe really aren't. So how do they make that determination, and how do you do it in your own ministry?
That's right. That's why it took so many years, because they methodically go through. They first start writing your letters. They correspond with you. And like with my case, they said, now we want you to tell us everything that happened in your own words. And so I wrote out this letter. I wrote pages, So I wrote a book. You want me to tell you everything? And so I did. And then it gets to another phase when they send a questionnaire. It's about 11 pages. They said, now fill out this questionnaire. Okay. And then when they get to a stage, they said, send us all of your records, your transcript, your police reports, your legal file. And they still said to me, this don't mean we taking your case, but we just want to do some investigation. And they have to be 100% sure that you're innocent. You have to be 100% innocent before they take your case. And so it took them 10 years. It's between 5 and 8 years before they would take a case if they feel like the case is innocent. And that's the same process that we're using. We would look at, and then I've been in the prison. Yeah. And so some of those guys, I know when guys is trying to, run game, as they say, or fake and try to pretend. So, because I've been there. Yeah. But there are a few guys who I believe that are innocent. I was there with them, and we worked on our cases in the law library together. But yes, it's a long process. So it don't just be, just because a guy say he's innocent, he's going to get some help. It don't work like that.
Yeah.
You have to really be innocent.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so I think the question that I have is most affiliated when you were talking about you transitioning from being free. I know a lot of people in my family in particular, when they go to jail, when they get out, they're still mentally institutionalized. I know a lot of people, I don't know if this applies to you, but a lot of people deal with post-traumatic stress disorder, being in a jail. I know you mentioned people like being stabbed, being killed, being raped, like that's a real thing. When you got out into the free world, did you still have any post-traumatic stress disorder or like mental things going on with you? And if so, how did you heal from that?
Yes, and a very good question and observation. Yes, I saw some counselors when I come home because I wanted to know if there was anything lingering inside of me that I'm gonna have to deal with, then I need some professionals to help me. So I saw 2 counselors, and that's what they said. You're gonna suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, probably for the rest of your days. And so crowds like this here would make me nervous. I'm petrified when I go back to St. Louis. Like I say, St. Louis, Ferguson, every time I go to this city where I grew up, where I was raised, I am so nervous. Anytime the police get behind me and I'm in the car, and it could just be, we could just be driving, they're not necessarily gonna pull me over. My hands automatically go to 10 and 2, right? As a black person, as a black man, And so, being in crowds like this now is not as stressful as it was. But when I first come home, the first 30 days in my freedom, I wouldn't come out of this room where I was at. I wouldn't come out, not by myself. I wouldn't go anywhere. I was petrified. I cannot tell north from south, east from west. I can come out of a building, even in my hometown, and I'm turned around, I'm confused. I don't let nobody get behind me when I'm in rooms. You know what I'm talking about? I keep doors in front of me. That's the way I was socialized in that prison. And another thing, we learned to have eyes in the back of our head in that prison. So if I'm looking at a guy when we was in the dining room, I'm looking at him across the table. I knew when someone was coming up to do me some harm from behind because his face would grimace. Or even if he's got food in his mouth, he would try to make an expression to let me know, you better duck, roll, and you better get out of the way because somebody's coming with a knife or something. So that's just how we are, those of us from prison. And we feel like I can't catch up. I can't catch up with this world 25 years later. I'm doing my best to try to keep up. But yes, there's a lot of things that, we struggle with. I mean, I was in a world with all men. I hadn't dealt with women. And women and guys, women are beautiful. We don't think alike. We really from Mars somewhere, but guys are really, sometimes they don't take prison to screw you up, to be a dude. I ain't no knock on you guys, But, I got 4 daughters and a wife, so I'm around all these women, and I can't make heads or tails sometime of what's going on with them. But they keep me on my toes. So I had to learn also how to socialize, with the opposite gender. That's what I had to learn.
Emotional intelligence as well, I assume.
Emotional intelligence, and just, yes. But it's one thing that we get from prisons. It's one thing that I think we get that's probably a little different than everybody else, is that we learn human behavior. I knew from a guy's look, I just knew this guy's finna hurt somebody. It didn't have to be me. Or I knew from his gait or his walk or his stare. I could look at guys from across the yard and I knew something is about to go down with this individual. You learn human behavior. You watch, because in prison you're up close and personal and you watch people all the time. And sometimes my wife even say that I can almost predict what she's gonna do or what she's gonna say because of how she's moving, her actions. As they say, most communication is nonverbal. Did you know that? Yeah. I think it's 60%, 70%? Most of it is nonverbal. So we had to watch a lot of nonverbals in prison. We had to learn that skill. And that's for real. And that's the way I survived in that place. And that's how I've been surviving since I've been home. I be watching people, and I know when people are upset, I get out their way. I just go in another direction. I had to get away from them because I'm not going to let you disturb my peace because you're having a bad day. No, it's not worth it. Microphones.
You have 4 daughters, and where's home?
Kansas, 4 daughters. Kansas is home. I live in Olathe, Kansas. And Kansas is spread out. We just moved to Kansas about a year ago. It is so spread out. But yes, my daughters, one live in Indiana. No, now she's in Georgia, and 2 in St. Louis, and 1 is in Kansas. 1 is in Kansas, yes. We got another question?
I know you spoke on the conditions and the violence within the Missouri State Penitentiary. Would you say those conditions remain for the most part the same throughout your 24 years there, or would you say they improved in any sort of way?
Yeah, good question. All these good questions. The conditions, the prisons, this prison is closed now. It's a museum or something. They get tours of this place. But the conditions is basically the same because that's a culture. And like I say, whether it's in Iowa, or Missouri, or wherever, it's just a culture. And the hearts of individuals pretty much is the same. It hasn't changed. And so the brutality, the stabbings, the assaults still happens. Now it may not happen on the scale that it did when I was there, back in the 80s, the 70s and 80s. Time magazine described it as the bloodiest 47 acres in America at one time. But it still happens. Yeah. Is that it?
Rhett, do you have a question?
Oh, good.
Oh, okay.
Okay. My question is, you said that Centurion got you out of prison. Did that mean did you have another trial then?
We had another hearing. It's what's called a court hearing in front of a judge. In Missouri, they called it a Rule 91, a state habeas corpus. So it was sort of like an appeal in some respect, maybe not an appeal so much, but it was a way where all the evidence that was not presented, it was presented before a judge. And the judge was able to make that determination. All the facts came out. Evidence that they hid, what's called a Brady violation, Brady versus Maryland, when they didn't reveal all the information or facts to help me, prove my innocence or my claims of innocence. Well, the judge was able to weigh all that and see all that, and that came out 20-some years later, and that's what brought me home.
Do you think that there's any way that injustice is going to get better? Like, what do you think it's going to take to have people like you that are incarcerated and they're innocent and all these lies and twisting and turning and everybody's involved in a big scheme of lies? What do you think it's going to take to change that? Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you asked. Great question. Good question. Well, it's going to take people like you all. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take citizens. It's going to take young people. It's going to take people of all ages to say, hey, enough is enough. We have to do something and maybe to elect some folks, vote for some folks who, may represent your values, that people would not have to go through this here because that's what's going to make the difference. It comes down to the legislature and it comes down to these branches of government. We have 3 branches of government, right? The legislative, the judicial, and the executive branch, So we have to, get people that can help to not only, interpret and change laws, bad laws, to stop allowing folks to just do things and have no consequences. If prosecutors lost their license when they did things like this, they would not do it. I think there's a case that happened in, it was the Duke lacrosse case. Anybody remember that case? Yeah. And what was that, in North Carolina or something like that? It was Duke. It was these lacrosse kids, these young boys. The prosecutor, he tried to frame these kids. Well, they had resources. I think they spent $1 million and fought them off. And you know what happened to that prosecutor? He lost his license. He would practice no more. And I mean, I don't wish anybody to go to jail, but I mean, what happens when you go to the hospital and a doctor operate on something they ain't supposed to operate on? They call it malpractice, right? Ain't that what they call it? If somebody operate on you or do something they're not supposed to, even when somebody's driving a vehicle and hits you, they call it, know, it's some people say, you know, it may be vehicular, you know, a crash or whatever, but somebody's got to pay the consequence for that. So lawyers shouldn't have this immunity, all this other stuff. They should have to, you know, be some consequences for that. One more. Oh, right there.
Yes, thank you. My question kind of follows up on that same thought, I guess. As an attorney, I know that you certainly were the subject of legal malpractice, and I think the profession owes you a tremendous apology as well. But as I look at this community here in Dubuque that is certainly predominantly white, in our system here, we lose the benefit of having juries that have the face of minorities because we are not a community that has those faces. Was your jury panel, being from Ferguson, were there any minorities on your jury panel? Did you see any systemic racism that you can help us as we try to educate our own legal community about those types of issues, how we benefit by having folks who are different than me on the jury panel? Is there anything like that you can help us understand better in this community?
Well, yes, another great question and observation. The judge was white, the police were white, the lawyer who represented me was white, the prosecutor was white, so these are white people. This was a black on black crime in a black urban community. The composition of the jury was, I think, half and half, if I remember correctly, or a little bit leaning, you know, white. And there was, I won't say a cross section of, you know, age, you know, I guess composition, because there was only two young ladies on the jury who was about my age. I'm in my 20s, and one was black and one was white. But everybody else seemed to be older. Yeah, they were older folks. And so, I mean, everybody has some biases. Okay, we can be honest about that. And a lot of times, you know, if you're not around people who don't look like you, if you don't socialize with people who don't look like you, then you don't understand where they're coming from. And if you get these stereotypical images on the TV and on radio and on the news and in the newspaper constantly about a certain demographic of people, well, you have a bias when you're going there, particularly when they charge for something as serious as murder. And it's hard to get past that. But I challenge people, whenever you get selected to be on a jury, ask the jurors, ask the prosecutor, is there any evidence that you're not telling us about that we need to know about in this case? Ask them, you know, and see what they say. Because it's gamesmanship, I hate to say it, but some prosecutors and some lawyers, they don't like to show their whole hand, right? They don't like to, you're a lawyer, you know what you said? They don't like to reveal all of their cards. And that's unfortunate, but if it's about the truth, then put it all out there. If it's about the truth, and let the truth fall wherever it may. If the person is guilty, then why do you need to hide anything? And if you represent an innocent person, then why do the defense need to hide anything? Did it make sense?
Yes.
Thank you for that question. That's good. Is that it? Thank you, guys. Thank you all for listening.